my goodness.
Turn off the 1, 2, 3, 4.
Cannoli on the track. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Anna, a clinical psychology doctoral intern. Today we're going to talk about honesty and self-respect in relationships. So I was recently reading this book called Radical Honesty by Dr. Brad Blanton. And the whole premise is that basically we humans create a lot of misery by not being honest with each other. That if we were very brutally honest with each other, a lot of our issues would just dissipate. And intertwined with that, there's a lot of anti-moralism and his thoughts on why when we try to be moral and virtuous or whatever, we're essentially kidding ourselves. It comes from a place of ego and so forth. Now, I'm going to talk about what I took from the book that was a good thing, but I do want to say, first of all, I don't really think I'd recommend this book. I think that this whole anti-moralism thing it's talking about is a little bit hypocritical because anti-moralism is a value set in and of itself. It is a type of moralism. So I think it's a little bit inherently hypocritical in that sense to say like any other virtues, they're not real, they come from a place of ego, but this anti-moralism, brutal honesty thing, that's not a virtue. Let's be real, that is also a value in and of itself. Also, I thought that the book would go a little bit more into why honesty is the best approach in relationships, what sorts of things can go wrong when you're not honest, what sorts of things can unfold when you are honest, and it was very little of that. Honestly, I can think of one example in which he showed how somebody being honest reaped psychological benefits, whereas somebody who couldn't be honest had a very tragic fate. And that was really the only piece of evidence he gave, and I kind of felt like it was just his stance of you should be honest at all times, very brutally, without an explanation as to why that's helpful. There were also some therapeutic techniques, since this is a psychologist, that he mentioned in there that I personally, as a therapist, as a psychologist in training, would never do because of the ethics code. And also, I just don't think that brutal honesty is always the kindest approach, and I do think that kindness is something that we should consider when interacting with other people, but I guess Dr. Blanton would call me a moralist for saying that. But the book made me think about something from DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. In the interpersonal effectiveness module of DBT, there is this notion that in any interpersonal interaction, you can have 3 types of goals going into it. One is a specific goal, like, for instance, I want to obtain this thing, I want to set this boundary, I want to ask this person to do something for me. Another goal is preserving the relationship with the other person, and a third goal is self-respect. And I realized that in my discussions with clients and even with myself, self-respect is often one of those goals in interpersonal interactions that just kind of gets overlooked, that people don't prioritize quite as much as the other two. And I do think that the moment-to-moment honesty that Dr. Blanton is advocating for is a really good approach for prioritizing self-respect, for being true to your genuine, authentic self, speaking your truth in the moment, without trying to modify yourself and fit yourself in a very specific shape in order to appease the person that you're talking to. And I think that when we neglect self-respect, we are in turn resenting the other person. We're resenting ourselves for not saying something. We become passive-aggressive, like not showing up to events that we said we were going to show up to, not doing things that people have asked us to do, gossiping behind their back, taking small jabs at people. So this is what this video is all about, is the benefits of prioritizing being honest in relationships and being self-respectful in the way that you interact with other people. Let me give you an example, because I think examples are really the best way to understand what I'm trying to say here. Imagine for a moment that you're at some sort of family dinner, and your annoying Uncle Gerald is saying something offensive and inflammatory. You have 3 possible goals. Preserve the relationship, attain a specific goal, such as I want to keep the peace over this family dinner, I don't want an argument to erupt, and preserve self-respect. Now, a lot of people who are in a very people-pleasing mindset, they're just going to focus on preserving their relationship. They don't want to upset the other person. They don't want to get into a conflict. They just want to keep the peace, keep quiet. Maybe they'll laugh off whatever he said, or even validate what he said. A lot of people doing healing work, trying to come to terms with what boundaries they need, what needs they have, people who are going to therapy, they might just focus on the specific goal that they have. And I find myself leaning more towards this because I feel like I'm very goal-oriented. I'm very like, okay, what do I want to get out of this interaction? How can I get what I want out of this interaction? If you're a little bit more concrete like that, you tend to go straight towards the goal, whether it's preserving the peace over family dinner or anything else. So if that is your goal, if you want to just preserve the peace, you might emotionally regulate yourself, make sure that you don't personalize what he's saying, or set a boundary. But what gets lost in this process with both of these goals is that you're not addressing the self-respect piece, where you actually speak your mind in an authentic way. You're being honest to what is actually going on for you internally. So this could look like saying, Uncle Gerald, I've actually looked into the research on what you're saying about this topic, and what you're saying is actually misinformation. But here's the thing. A lot of people, when they've been neglecting self-respect and they start to prioritize it, they tend to overlook the other two goals and really go hard with the brutal honesty, like kind of this book is advocating for, to be honest. And that kind of brutal honesty can be interpersonally effective because you're not preserving the relationship and you might not be getting your specific needs met in that situation. So if you say to Uncle Gerald, you're being so stupid right now, everything you just said is false. You can imagine it's going to be very difficult to look him in the eye the rest of the dinner. It might upset you, your other family members. A conflict could escalate. It wouldn't be the most appropriate thing to say. So my suggestion would be, if you find yourself in that sort of position and you want to be self-respectful, also consider at least one of the other two goals. So prioritize your self-respect, yes, and also consider, is this a relationship I care to preserve? You know, if you're speaking to someone that you're never going to interact with again, maybe it doesn't matter to you if the relationship gets ruined as a result of what you're about to say and doesn't meet your goal, your other goals in the situation, whether it's to set a boundary, to get a need met, to get peace of mind, anything under the sun. If your goal is to speak your truth, there is a way to do that that will also get your other needs met. So what does honoring self-respect look like with regards to moment-to-moment honesty? It could look like saying, the way you said that was hurtful. Actually, I disagree with that. I found that comment to be unnecessary. What do I want for dinner tonight? Sushi. What about you? Hey, I saw that text just pop up with a bunch of heart emojis on your phone. That makes me uncomfortable. Who was that? In my opinion, this other way of completing the project would be better fit for our audience. I feel sad right now. Can I have a hug? It means expressing your feelings right as they occur, setting boundaries, being honest about your desires in the moment, standing up for yourself when someone is walking all over you, respectfully disagreeing with people, and correcting information that you know to be false. All things that can be done in a tactful way that also is kind to the other person and also preserves whatever concrete goals you have for this interaction. Do you struggle with this? And if so, what do you think about this approach? Maybe you want to try it out and come back to the comments and let us know how it went. Let me just leave you with one example of a recent way that I implemented this. So recently, a family member of mine was saying something that I knew to be false. And ultimately would have just people pleased and just kind of kept the peace, said haha, whatever, or just ignored the comment. But instead, I said, actually blank, that disagreed with what they were saying. And you know, they didn't take it too well. You know, they weren't receptive to the feedback that I gave them. They weren't interested in learning new information on the topic. It didn't particularly strengthen our relationship. Actually, it kind of ruptured it a little bit. But I still felt good about it because I knew that I was honoring my self-respect in that moment, that for once I was saying what I wanted to say, what was genuinely authentic for me, what was going on for me internally, as opposed to only considering external factors when deciding how I want to move through the world. So let me know if you try this out and how it goes for you. Take care. Bye.